Well, hello, everyone. I'm Demi Vaughn for the Power of the Patient Project, and my guest today is Kearni N. Warren. Kearni N. Warren is an author, advocate, and speaker. She is a member, healthcare lobbyist, and political organizer with the Service Employees International Union. And for over 3 years, from 2014 to 2017, as a broadcaster, she was also one of the main hosts of many of the over 100 video segments that are part of health and wellness here on our website, and was a driving force behind the creation of the Power of the Patient Project. So this makes this an even more special interview for us. The story we're going to hear today began in 2016 when suddenly 3 members of her immediate family became critically ill at the same time, and Kearni became their caregiver. She stopped all of her many projects to care for her 2 grandmothers and her mother, staying by their side day and night. When her mother passed away in the summer of 2018, Kearni founded the Caregiver Society, an affirming and intentional community that supports the spiritual, mental, and physical needs of caregivers. This organization has become one of the largest and most celebrated organizations of its kind in the country. In 2019, she published her first book, Caregiving for a Warrior: My Life with My Mother, Reverend Bernice Warren. And in 2020, she was one of the contributors of a new book, Successfully Broken. It is my great pleasure to welcome Kearni N. Warren.
Thank you so much, Demi, for that wonderful introduction. I do feel like this is full circle from working with the organization and now being interviewed. So thank you. Um, so the Caregiver Society provides a safe space for caregivers to gather and express their shared experiences. We offer wellness activities for mental, spiritual, and physical support. We understand the various types of needs for caregivers. We are open to all types of caregivers, those caring for children living with special needs, adults living with disabilities, those who have Alzheimer's, and the temporary and terminally ill. We also believe caregiving is a community-wide, so we assist with the elders in our community and those living without family or friends in our area with like housekeeping and other necessary errands. We also provide patient advocacy, so we attend doctor's visits with some of the elders or people living in our communities that need rides to the doctor visits or just to take along. As you know, it's always great to have another person with you when you're visiting the doctors. And we also act as a referral agency for people who have questions about the caregiving process. So the Caregiving Society began as an idea in 2016 while caring for my grandmother. And I actually remember sharing this with Bob. However, it wasn't the right time then, so I put it on my vision board to remind myself. And so once my mother's health began to decline, I decided to stop all of the projects like you had mentioned and the work that I was doing because I became her full-time caregiver. And it was at that point that I asked myself, who provides care for the caregivers? I also noticed the raw talents of caregivers who I was around, and I thought, what would happen if I created a safe space where caregivers could go to relax, vent, and to assist in remembering who they are and what their needs are. I wanted to inspire and empower us. The longer I stayed away from working, the more I thought, this cannot last. I have to bring in some form of income, so I began searching for employment where I could work from home. And my mother remembered that there was a new opportunity within our denomination in our local church for a new worshiping community. And she suggested that I call my pastor to learn more about it. And after I did that, he gave me details of the opportunity. I had an interview, and then I realized that this assignment was perfect because it allowed me to stay at home, and it allowed me to use all of my raw talents and basically it was like an exploratory opportunity to come up with a program to service the community for a special type of demographic. And I, at the time, was seeking some type of work balance where the work that I was doing was much more fulfilling. And the focus of the role was to specifically create a program to service my community. So after weeks of trying to figure out what this demographic would be, I remembered caregivers. I'm a caregiver. I'm surrounded by caregivers. We need care for ourselves. There's so much that happens when you're a caregiver that if you're not a caregiver, people just don't understand. So it was at that time that I partnered with my church and my local denomination to make that happen. And so the Caregiver Society is currently going on in its third year.
That's awesome that you were able to make everything work for you and you're able to start a whole organization. That's an amazing accomplishment. So why do you feel like caregivers are so important today? As you know, we live longer, but unfortunately there is much more sickness in the world. And also considering like we have this new deadly virus going around, like why do you feel like caregivers are so important today?
Yeah. Caregivers are important because, as you said, people are living longer. 9 out of 10 seniors want to live at home as they age and as they become ill. And nearly half of those seniors will need some form of assistance while staying at home. And our loved ones, they deserve the ability to stay at home with dignity and to receive quality care from caregivers who receive living wages and benefits. And not everyone has what I call a caregiver's heart, which is the ability to provide care without being asked what to do. For caregivers, showing love and consideration towards others just comes naturally in their personal lives as well. I mean, if you run into caregivers, you might notice that they will give the shirts off their backs to help people. So, I believe anyone can help someone who is sick with a task list. You give someone a task, they can do it. But everyone won't provide that care and support with a smile and a genuine heart that actually wants to serve. You have to have a servant's heart to be a true caregiver. Everyone doesn't go the extra mile to learn what makes a sick person happy. And that's really important when you're dealing with someone who either they're sick or they're living with some type of disability. You really need to know what makes them happy or understand their emotional or physical needs from not always them telling you. Sometimes it's just from a look or a simple sound that they make if they're unable to speak. So I believe caregivers are truly special. When you have an illness or live with a person with, or if you have an illness or live with a disability, you often feel that you're a burden to those around you. And caregivers know this. So they go out of their way to not only make their patient feel loved, but they make them feel as it's an honor to care for them, because it really is. You're sharing special time with people that is priceless. And at some point in all of our lives, we will all come face to face with caregiving due to an accident or an illness, whether it's temporary or permanent. And we will need someone to either care for us, or we will need to care for our loved ones, or we will need to hire a stranger for someone we love.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like caregiving is definitely like a talent. Like you said, that sometimes they might not be able to tell you what they need, but it's really about like knowing and just having that intuition.
Mhm.
So, what would you say is the difference between the men and women who work for home care agencies, the people that inspired you to start your organization, and the people that care for their own loved ones in their home?
This is a great question to me. The demand for home care in Pennsylvania probably everywhere, but I'm in Pennsylvania, is growing. But families are unable to get the quality care that they need, and oftentimes workers can't always afford to provide it. There's definitely stark differences between home care workers in an agency versus those that care for their loved ones at home. A main difference caring for a loved one at home, particularly at this time, is the availability of personal protective equipment or PPE. A home caregiver's role is often 24 hours, 7 days a week responsibility. And caregivers at home provide the same type of work and care as workers that work for an agency, but plus more because it's often 24/7. Another difference is that home care workers don't receive overtime pay if they live in the same house as their loved ones. So caregivers are not getting paid for all of the work that they do because you're allowed a certain amount of hours, but if you obviously work past those hours because you live with them, you're not getting paid for that. Home care workers are also unable to receive pay for caring for a child or a spouse. So many caregivers make a difficult choice to either give up their guardianship of their children, and spouses contemplate divorce in order to care for each other. Home caregivers also do not receive paid time off, like sick days, vacation days, or personal days. So if a caregiver is sick and doesn't work, the caregiver doesn't get paid. That's why caregivers burn out a lot, because if they need to run personal errands or go to the doctors, they won't get paid for that. And home caregivers also do not receive benefits such as health care. Almost half of Pennsylvania home care workers rely on some form of public assistance because of poverty, wages, lack of benefits, and inadequate support at work. So 2 out of 5 home care workers will leave their jobs each year, and that leaves a very harmful void in the home in regards to the patient. So home care workers, home caregivers can either be a loved one or a friend. So if it's a friend or someone you know through someone else and they leave their job because they're not making enough money, it makes it really hard on the family and the patient.
Yeah, that definitely sounds tough, especially when you mentioned that like some home care workers aren't able to like receive benefits, and sometimes they have to give up guardianship. Yeah, this sounds really difficult. So I know you are very concerned about the caregiver and their overall well-being, and it is a stressful responsibility. In your book, you state, if your patient is not in tune with their mental health, make sure to keep on top of yours. Make time for yourself. You cannot take care of your patient if you are mentally, physically, and spiritually depleted and not taking care of yourself. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Sure, and this is something that I think, again, if you're not a caregiver or home caregiver, a lot of people have no idea what the caregiver is experiencing and going through. Being a caregiver is fulfilling work for those who truly love it, but it can be isolating. Not many people know or understand, as I said, what it involves. So you consciously and happily give up your needs and your desires to care for someone you love. And at times that can become really depressing and you can feel alone. Friends and family might suggest to take you out for a day to get away, or maybe offer to go on a trip or take you to dinner. It's, something that they think is very helpful to you as some form of relief, but what they don't know is that it's not that simple to leave out the house. There's so much planning that goes into being able to leave the house, even for a simple errand. So you can imagine how difficult it is to find some downtime to get away. You have to find someone to take over your shift, and that means you have to pay someone to do that, and you have to be able to trust whoever it is for whatever type of care your loved one is receiving. So a lot of times caregivers also feel as though they're the only ones that can truly care for their patient or their loved one the best, you know. Caregivers often suffer with burnout because we're always there. If a caregiver is feeling tired and burned out, that can lead to problems such as abuse to the patient, in addition to decline of their own personal health. The work and assistance caregivers provide is crucial to the survival of the patient. And if caregivers are administering medications or tending to wounds that can get infected, servicing feeding tubes, bathing their loved ones, the list goes on. If the caregiver isn't rested or taking care of themselves mentally, horrible, horrible mistakes can be made. So these are all activities that require a strong and rested mental capacity. You cannot be an efficient caregiver to your loved one or your patient if you are not functional. Me time is extremely important. It's important to reboot and refresh for the health of yourself and your patient. So when you can find those small times of downtime when you may change a shift, you know, instead of tending to your loved one or your patient, the needs that may not have been in the forefront, but things that you just normally have to do, it's best to take that time to try to take a nap or just do something that's really nice for you, just to refresh yourself, because I like to say, care for yourself so you can better care for others.
Right. Mental health is so important. Like it really is.
Yeah.
But while we're on the topic of one of your books, could you tell me about both of your books? Why did you decide to write them, and what do you want to convey to the reader?
Yeah, I've always thought of writing a book, but I never knew what the topic would be or if I had anything important to say. I was inspired to write my first book when my mother became sick. However, I didn't know what the focus would be or how it would end. I thought about writing her autobiography for her relevance in the Presbyterian Church. And then I thought about journaling our daily activities, which I actually started to do, but they were in video form. So my desire to write a book was confirmed when a friend surprised us with two framed pictures of both of us, my mother and I looked at the one of those images and I thought, this is going to be the picture in the book, or this is it. There was something that was really that really connected me to my mom and the book. I looked at so and then another time, a friend of my mother, I shared my desire with her, and she started to tell me about other encouraging books that she read where people were sick and things like that. And she thought that it would be a really great idea. So I thought, maybe I can really do this. Then it wasn't until I was helping my mother at bedtime, and when out of nowhere, my mother said to me, Kearney, people will talk about our love story forever. And I thought, that's weird. Why is she saying that? Then it dawned on me, I'm writing this book. So I put author again on my vision board, and 3 months later I started the writing process, and Caregiving for a Warrior, My Life with My Mother, Reverend Bernice Warren, was finished in 6 months later. And so I've always wanted to inspire little girls and share my great experiences with them. My goal of the Caregiver Society was to inspire and empower caregivers. I knew I wanted to continue on that path and that I wanted to become an official author, writing several books. But again, I wasn't sure what I should write about. And approximately 7 months after I finished Caregiving for a Warrior, I was approached by an entrepreneur, an author, who also focuses on assisting others to live their best life. She shared that she was working on a inspirational book project, focusing on women who have endured hardships but continue to be successful. And so I was so honored that she thought of me and thought it was a wonderful opportunity. So I became a co-contributing author to Successfully Broken: Stories of Blessings and Lessons on the Road to Success. Um, and what I want to convey to the readers of both of my books is that deep love doesn't have boundaries. Life isn't always fair or perfect, nor does it always go as planned, and it can be quite challenging. However, never lose sight of your goals and remember to be present with all that you do and those that you're around, because life can change with a blink of an eye. And so it's important that we make time for those that we say that we care, we love and care about.
Yes, I definitely agree with you, and that was definitely an amazing message that you had for your readers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, you're also involved in the United Home Care Workers of Pennsylvania. Did you help start this union, and why is this organization so important to your mission of improving the life of the caregiver and their patients?
Yes, so you're correct. I belong to the United Home Care Workers of Pennsylvania Union, which is a local leg of SEIU, or the Service Employees International Union, Healthcare Pennsylvania. However, I did not start the union. I did assist in unionizing a managed care organization, which is organizations that provide, that are the fiscal agents for home care workers, among other ones that we've won since 2014. Up to now, even during the pandemic. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done. SEIU and the United Home Care Workers of Pennsylvania are important to me because we fight for the rights and needs of not only caregivers, but healthcare workers, all of healthcare workers in Pennsylvania, and patients of the home care workers. So we're currently fighting to, what we say is to respect us as home care workers, to respect us, protect us, and invest in us. That is our current fight for this coming year and beyond, because it's time that caregivers are treated like any other industry, and that living wages of $15 per hour is offered. We are also fighting for PPE, personal protective equipment, to be handed out, and essential benefits such as health insurance and paid time off is provided for home care workers. And we're fighting for caregivers whose hours are being cut without proper notification or adequate reasoning. So you have some caregivers, home care workers, who are caring for their loved ones, and their hours are being drastically cut from, let's say, 150 hours a week to maybe 80, and the list goes on and on. So it's a constant fight for caregivers, because we're finally at the point where we're being recognized as an industry, and so my fight is for all healthcare workers and caregivers in Pennsylvania. So that is why the union is important to me. And they gave me a voice. They gave me a voice, and I'm a just person and an advocate. And it just made sense that my life lined up to where I was working, as you mentioned earlier in my intro, with Bob and health and wellness, and being a caregiver, and wanting to inspire and empower people, and now working as a member of both the unions, but also as a lobbyist and political organizer around healthcare in Pennsylvania.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, my last question, is if someone wants to learn more about becoming a caregiver, either to someone in their family or perhaps someone in the community, where can they find more information?
So, yes, a person can reach out to me by visiting my website at thecaregiversociety.com. They can also send an email to me at Kearni@thecaregiversociety.com, or they can contact their county's Department of Human Services to inquire about their county's Office of Long-Term Living, which is the office that handles senior services, uh, things like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kearney, for taking the time out to talk to me a little bit more about your organization and how you started it and your books. I really appreciate it. And I learned so much about caregivers today, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
And thank you for the opportunity to highlight caregivers. In 20, I think it was 2016, there was a survey that said that there were about 43.5 million caregivers in the United States, and that didn't include those who were unpaid. So I thank you for having me on today to highlight the important work that caregivers are doing.
You're welcome. Well, thank you so much, Kearney, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.